Man, I'm so excited for this episode. In this episode, I'm going to be convincing you that every single person, including you, most importantly you, has $1 million idea inside of them. And I'm going to be talking about what's blocking you from accessing that $1 million idea. What I believe is that everybody has access to financial abundance, not just the lucky, the rich, the smart. And if you want to be a millionaire, you can be. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the desire to become a millionaire. And I'm speaking from personal experience. If you know my story, it wasn't that long ago that I had no money in my bank account, 2 homes in foreclosure, a bunch of credit card debt, a failed business. I had been alone for 10 years, going from broken relationship to broken relationship. And now I'm literally living my dream life. Over the last 7 years, my wife and I have built a $30 million coaching and consulting company, delivering transformation to tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people now doing what I love. And there is something inside of you that is identical but different to this purpose-driven life that I'm living. And I'm going to talk to you about how to access this. And it's important to understand from the very, very beginning how powerful our decisions are. And so if you're watching this video, it's because you want to access that $1 million idea inside of you. And in order for you to do that, step one, I'm going to give you 4 really important pieces of the puzzle today. Step one is you've got to decide that there's $1 million idea inside of you. That's the beginning. And so we're going to start at the starting point. There's $1 million idea inside of you. If you want to be a millionaire, if you want to have financial abundance, the idea exists and it is ready for the taking. Now, I'm using $1 million idea. It could be a $10 million idea, a $100 million idea, $250,000 idea, whatever level of financial prosperity and abundance you desire. Forget about how long you've been living in some form of financial insecurity or your story around, what money was like when you were younger, or how intelligent you are, or what resources you are, how down and out you might feel right now. None of that is irrelevant. If you have the desire, the most important thing in step one is to decide that there is an idea that correlates with the materialization of that financial abundance and prosperity for you. I talk about in other episodes how all of creation already exists right here, right now. And what I mean by that is all ideas already exist in the field or in consciousness. And so whenever we have an idea, it's not that we're coming up with that idea. That idea exists already. If you think about the idea for creating Amazon.com, Jeff Bezos did not come up with that idea. That idea of creating an e-commerce store that sells books that over time has become an e-commerce juggernaut, that idea has always existed in consciousness, even before the internet existed. All of creation is already complete. This is what the great spiritual teachings tell us. I know there's a lot of debate around who actually invented the light bulb, whether it was Tesla, whether it was Edison, whether it was a variety of other people. But if just using Edison as the example, he didn't come up with the idea for the light bulb, neither did Tesla. The idea for the light bulb has always existed. And as we follow inspiration, as we remove the resistance in the stories and the limiting beliefs about how small we are and about how abundance or prosperity or innovation or a purpose-driven life is only meant for other people but not us, as we drop that resistance, we align ourselves with the idea itself. We start to become the frequency of the idea, and the idea that is yours will find its way to you. And this is very important to understand, because if you believe that you have to actually work hard or hustle or grind or be in a particular place in the world or be born in America or be born to rich parents or have a certain level of education in order to come up with an idea to make you a millionaire, and your life experience doesn't align with those things, then you're going to believe that $1 million ideas are for other people and not you. Buddha said the mind is everything what you think you become. Gandhi said something very, very similar. In scripture in Romans, it's written, be not conformed to this world, meaning the life you have, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When you're willing to make a new decision and you finish this episode and you say, you know what, I may not know what it is, you will know how to access it by the end of this episode. But I know that there is $1 million idea perfectly aligned with who I've become and the experiences I've had in my life that is making its way to me right now, guess what your reality will become in the very near future? The realization of that idea. So the first step is you got to decide that there's $1 million idea waiting for you. And if we're looking for evidence of the fact that that's true, again, I can share my own story. There was $1 million idea waiting for me, the idea of sharing my story of suffering and my journey of transformation and the tools that I learned both as an entrepreneur and as someone on the personal development or spiritual journey, and translating that or transforming that into a coaching company. That idea existed. But I only had access to it once I had that as my lived experience. So you could say, yeah, but Dave, you grew up in Orange County, California. You didn't grow up totally broke, so you always had resources. Or Dave, you grew up in the United States. You didn't grow up like I'm growing up in Nairobi or in Thailand or in some other place where there may be perceived less opportunity for entrepreneurship or for wealth creation. Yet we have evidence that people of all walks of life, of all classes, everywhere in the world have been able to access their $1 million ideas. So what is it that they're doing differently than what you're doing right now? I met a woman several years ago. I was part of a high-level coaching group, and there was a speaker. Her name was Suzy Batiste, and she founded a company called Poopery. And this is a product that mostly women spray into the toilet, comprised of essential oils that help cover the smell of poop. She's become a billionaire as a result of this idea. And if you look at her history, she would seem on paper to be an unlikely candidate for becoming a billionaire. She experienced a tremendous amount of trauma, physical abuse, sexual abuse. She was broke. She had what anybody would describe looking from the outside in as a hard life. In an interview, she was interviewed in Rolling Stone, but she shared with me personally when I had an opportunity to speak to her. She said, all of the trauma that I experienced over the course of my life led me down this journey to try to heal myself. And in that process of healing, I built a relationship with what I would describe as my higher self or my higher power. And as I established a more consistent relationship with spirit, I started having access to these ideas. And so she attributes her entrepreneurial success to the fact that she actually had a lived experience of lack and wounding and trauma that set her on a path for healing. And as she healed, she gained access to this idea. So you don't have to come from a rich family. You don't have to be born in the United States. You don't have to speak English. You don't need to have any of these things, ways or means. There is an idea waiting for you right here, right now, for you to tune into it, your $1 million idea. So step one is you have to decide that there's an idea that is making its way to you right here, right now. Number two, you have to know that you have a purpose. You have to know that you're meant for greatness in the world. You have to know that everything that you're using as evidence and stacking against yourself for why you can't have more or why you can't be more is actually the reason why you can be and have even more. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of people think they don't have a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. Everything that exists in our reality has a purpose. There's this incredible, intricate coordination and orchestration of the natural world. We can see that everything has a purpose. Here we live in Puerto Rico, and every year there's a dust storm that rises up in Africa that makes its way across Puerto Rico and causes a lot of allergic reactions and breathing problems for a lot of people because that dust storm is on its way to the Amazon and is critical in fertilizing the Amazon so that the Amazon can grow and thrive, so that we have enough oxygen on this planet. Right? There's an intricate system that's being coordinated, and every single piece of the system plays a critical role, and you play a critical role in the system. So you have to know that you have a purpose, because this $1 million idea that already exists right here, right now, that you can decide exists, is going to be aligned with your purpose. When you live your purpose into the world, you create extraordinary value. We call this purpose a spiritual vision. Your spiritual vision is why you exist in this time-space reality. Your spiritual vision is the mechanism by which you transform and translate all of the early childhood traumas, the wounds, the experiences you had, whether it was being broke, whether it was being sick, whether it was being in a toxic relationship with a narcissist, whether it was building a business and having it fail. No matter what your experiences are that you might perceive as the reason why you're not bigger and better than you are right now, those are actually the catalysts for your greatness. Again, Suzy talked about it in her story about being guided by a higher part of herself and coming to realize as a result of overcoming the trauma and the tragedy in her life that she not only had an inner strength to persevere, but she had an inner strength to, and she describes this in the Rolling Stone article, create and build something to help others. You have an innate ability as a result of the experiences of your life to create and build something to help others. Each and every one of us does. We all play an important role in the system. And more often than not, your ability to help others through entrepreneurship or a business, this $1 million idea, is a result of the challenges that you've had. So it's very important for you to understand that the challenges that you've had and the lack that you seem to perceive in who you are as a result of what you've experienced is actually the fuel for your greatness. There was a woman named Candace Lightner, and she was a young parent. Her teenage daughter was killed by a driver who was under the influence. And as a result of that tragic experience, Candace Lightner became the founder of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. The challenge that she experienced in her life, she translated into the ability to help and serve now millions and millions and millions of other people and prevent so many other tragedies from occurring. And so I want you to realize that something has happened over the course of your life that has been intelligently designed. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. You are a hero on a hero's journey. And during that journey, at the very early stages, things happen to you. And unfortunately, a lot of the world, a lot of psychiatry, a lot of mental health, a lot of personal growth describes these things as bad things. Are they things that we would wish upon anyone else? Oftentimes, no. Sexual abuse? Of course not. Physical abuse? Of course not. Abandonment? Of course not. But what we also find is there's a certain set of people who leverage these experiences, they transform them, they digest them, they metabolize them into becoming extraordinary people. They're able to leverage the wound in order to forge the way forward. And so it's important for you to understand that not only do you have $1 million idea that's been waiting for you to tune into it, but that idea is going to be aligned with your spiritual vision. It's going to be aligned with the journey of your life and the things that have directly impacted you, the skills that you've developed as a result of it, the character traits that you have evolved into as a result of it. I grew up in a family where, if we were going to diagnose my family, which I don't recommend you do, at least not directly to your family, I grew up around workaholism. I grew up around codependence. There was a lot of not good enough. There was a lot of criticism and unworthiness that I became exposed to. So that formed programs or belief systems in me that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong, that if I wanted to be loved, I had to be successful and I had to achieve. And so I became, around my early 30s, an achievement, success pursuing, hustle and grinding, unempathetic, uncompassionate person who was constantly trying to feel good about myself by chasing success. That didn't work out so well. It never does. As a result of not knowing how to identify and resolve those uncomfortable emotions, I became a drug addict. I became an alcoholic. I became a sex addict. My business failed. My relationships fell apart. And I was forced to realize that my life had become unmanageable. And in that realization, I found myself moving towards working a recovery program going to meetings 3 times a week, working the 12 steps. And it was in the 12 steps that I built a relationship with my higher power, my God of my own understanding, because I didn't grow up in a religious family. And as a result of starting to let go of a lot of my hurt, I created space inside of me. And in that space, some purpose emerged, some ideas emerged. And so as a result of my addiction and my recovery, I was able to transform a tremendous amount of suffering that is common suffering that most people experience. And along the way, I started having these ideas that maybe I could help other people. And I had a lot of resistance to these ideas, but fortunately I had my wife who encouraged me into starting to share what I had learned with other people. And over the course of time, that became a very successful coaching business. That was my $1 million idea, that because I had been able to overcome my own hurt, I could help others overcome theirs. So it's important to understand that you have a spiritual vision, that life has been carefully and slowly crafting you, oftentimes through the challenges that you've experienced, to help you build character, to build courage, to build discipline, to build tenacity, to create the ability within you to know that not only can you overcome challenges, but you have the opportunity to create value and help other people in the world, whether that's through a product, through a business, through a service, through $1 million idea. The $1 million idea is the translation of who you've become into a business, a product, or a service. So that's the second thing. You gotta know, number one, that there's $1 million idea waiting for you. And number two, that you have a purpose in this world. And by living your purpose, you'll translate that $1 million idea into your reality. Now, you may be saying, Dave, but I don't know what my purpose is. That's okay. Just knowing that you have a purpose instead of believing that you don't. Just knowing that the challenges that you've experienced in your life are the seeds by which your greatness in the world will take sprout, versus believing that they are the reason why you are not great or cannot be great, will open up a new opportunity for clarity. You know, there's an adage in scripture, ask and you shall what? Receive. So now that you know there's $1 million idea waiting for you, and you know that you have a purpose in the world that is meant to translate that $1 million idea into your bank account and your reality, now you can start asking for clarity. But just notice, when we doubt, there's no room for clarity. When we doubt, there's no room for prayer. There's no room for asking and receiving. That's why these first 2 steps are so essential. They're setting you on the right course. They're aligned with right thinking and with reality. There's $1 million idea waiting for you, and you have to just simply decide that you can access it and that you have a purpose in the world that will translate that $1 million idea into reality. Step number 3, you have to decide abundance is your birthright, right? You have to decide that abundance is your birthright. Most people don't believe or haven't decided that abundance or prosperity or wealth or riches or $1 million is their birthright. Most people have believed or decided that money is hard to make. Most people have believed or decided that in order to be wealthy, you have to sacrifice your health or your relationships. And if they don't want to sacrifice their health or their relationships, then they can't be wealthy. Most people believe that other people can access great riches and wealth and prosperity and abundance, but that they can't. And then again, they go back and they look at all of the evidence of the challenges that they've experienced in their life, not realizing those challenges are absolutely the reason why you can, if you are willing, become prosperous and abundant. So most people have a lot of family money blocks, a lot of money trauma. And the reason for that is you grew up in an environment, perhaps just like I did, where we learned about money from people who had no idea that money was our birthright, who had no idea that our world is awash with so much wealth, and that the way for us to grab it is simply to decide that we're entitled to it and to start living our purpose into the world. Hey, it's David. Just a quick interruption to your regularly scheduled episode by your favorite sponsor. I want to tell you about my book. It is available on Amazon right here, right now. A Changed Mind, Go Beyond Self-Awareness, Rewire Your Brain, and Re-Engineer Your Reality. In this little book are all the frameworks, the tools, the methodologies that I talk about on this show and that I've used to actually change my mind and that tens of thousands of other people have used to transform their bank accounts, their businesses, their relationships, their health, their spiritual connection, everything that you want to achieve. This is the way to achieve it. And Amazon has done us a good one right now. It's significantly discounted. So you can go and pick up your copy, or better yet, pick up a copy for a friend too. There's nothing better than giving the gift of transformation right now. Hop on over to Amazon. There's a link in the show notes. And if you love the book as much as I loved writing it for you, do me a favor, let me know that and leave a review. And now back to your regularly scheduled episode. So my dad was an attorney, and so most of the time he was working late nights. In fact, as I was an early teenager, he wasn't coming home during the week at all. And so I learned you had to work really, really hard to make money. Even though I was experiencing financial prosperity as a young person. And so I hit an upper limit in terms of what I was able to make, because there was a point at which I couldn't work anymore. And if working hard equals the amount of money I could make, I hit an upper limit on my bank account. Some people believe that money causes problems. They saw their parents, or maybe you saw your parents, arguing about money. You don't want problems in your life. So at an unconscious level, you don't want money. Another thing that we seem to all experience, and I found this to be the universal money block, is that as a result of our parents not knowing how money worked, their parents not knowing how money worked, their parents not knowing how money worked, and literally generation after generation after generation believing in scarcity and believing in financial insecurity and therefore creating that in our reality, we look around, both in our own experience and at most other people, and we come to this conclusion that we don't have enough. We see a handful of people who are really, really wealthy, and we look at what we've got, and we start to affirm this idea that I don't have enough. And because we perceive our current situation as not having enough, we start to worry that in the future we won't have enough. And so what happens is we've conditioned ourselves and trained ourselves to start worrying about whether or not we're going to have enough at the end of the month in order to pay our mortgage, in order to pay our health insurance, in order to feed our families. And the brain is a goal-achieving machine. It's a very, very powerful tool. Whatever you put into it as an input in terms of a belief or a decision, you will get as the output. So if you believe that you may not have enough at the end of the month, that's going to become your reality. And by the way, that's not some sort of new age woo-woo. That's a fundamental understanding of neuroscience and how the brain works and how behavioral psychology and how the mind works. Whatever you believe, for example, that you may not have enough or that you don't have enough, you're going to think thoughts on a daily basis aligned with that belief. So you're going to think thoughts of lack, and you won't have thoughts of abundance. You're going to come up with ideas that produce lack, and you won't be able to access your $1 million idea. And as you think these thoughts of financial insecurity, you're going to experience financial insecurity as an emotion, even when it's not happening right here, right now. You're going to be stressed that you're not going to have enough. You're going to actually experience not having enough, even though you're just sitting in your living room. Those emotions will then translate themselves into some form of action, trying to hustle or grind or work even harder, procrastination or self-sabotage, making a decision to go work a job or a career where there's no upside. And then that action will produce a result. Oh my gosh, look, I don't have very much and I may not have enough at the end of the month. Your decisions dictate your destiny. And the good news is that if we want to transform the results of our life, all we have to do is change our minds. All we have to do is decide something differently. And so what I'm encouraging you to do here in this third step is decide abundance is your birthright. And take a look at this idea, this sort of ultimate money block, this idea that I've never had enough, I don't have enough, and I will not have enough. And realize that's the biggest lie that you're telling yourself. The truth is, and the new belief can be, if you choose for it to be, that you've always had enough, you have enough, and you will always have enough. Now you could say, but Dave, I don't have enough. And I would say, no, you're wrong. You do have enough. How do we know? Because you're here right now, watching YouTube, listening on Spotify or iTunes or some other show. You've got shelter. You've got food. You've got air. You've got water. Guess what you've got enough of? Everything that you need. So I understand that, and I did this for most of my life, and this was one of the biggest shifts I made around money and deciding abundance was my birthright and accessing my $1 million idea. I understand it may not seem like you have enough, but what you're really saying is there's more that you want, but you have enough. And that's a very important distinction. You have always had enough, you have enough, and you will always have enough. And if you realize that, what happens all of a sudden is we eliminate this belief that you don't have enough, and you're able to activate abundance in your life. In other words, the fastest way for you to create more financial prosperity and abundance is to acknowledge the financial prosperity and abundance you have. The fastest way for you to create more is to recognize that right now you have enough. Because if your brain is a goal-achieving machine and you recognize the enoughness that's going on, more enoughness will start to occur in your life. More financial prosperity and abundance will start to come your way. But search within yourself and be really honest with this inventory. Have you been telling yourself that you don't have enough? Is it really true? Or are you saying that you have enough and you'd like more? It may seem like a 2 millimeter distinction, but that will break your $1 million dam. That will allow the floodgates to open. If we align up these new decisions, you decide that you've got $1 million idea because everybody does. You decide that you have a purpose in the world as a result of the things that you've gone through in your life and you've overcome, and the translation of that purpose into a business, a product, or a service is the way your $1 million idea will materialize itself. And if you decide that abundance is your birthright, that you've always had enough, that you have enough, and you will always have enough, within a very short period of time, you'll start to get clarity on your $1 million idea. See, your $1 million idea is inside of you. Your $1 million idea already exists around you. Your $1 million idea is just waiting to be born. And so it's not about figuring out how to find your $1 million idea. If you're hearing what I'm saying, if you are picking up what I am laying down, it's about removing the resistance that is blocking the natural expression of your $1 million idea. My story is about removing the resistance. And there was my $1 million idea. Suzy Batiste's story was about removing the resistance. There was the $1 million idea. The thousands of entrepreneurs we've worked with who have come into our programs unclear about what their $1 million idea was, who have discovered their $1 million idea, or who knew what their $1 million idea was, but didn't know how to express it or translate it into the world vis-a-vis the mechanism of a business. We don't work with them to figure it out. We identify the resistance and we remove it. Boom. Now the clarity occurs. You cannot access financial prosperity, abundance, your $1 million idea, clarity, inspiration, if you are tense. There's a great video on the internet, Arnold Schwarzenegger's 6 Success Principles. And his 5th principle is relax. Relax. You can't achieve anything great if you're tense. You think about it from a sports metaphor. The greatest of sports performers performed at their highest level when they were relaxed. How do we relax? We identify the resistance that's keeping us tense, and we learn how to let go of the resistance. Of course you're going to be tense if you believe abundance is not your birthright, you don't have access to $1 million idea, and you don't have any purpose in the world. Hell yeah, you're going to be tense. You're going to be operating in fight or flight. Predominantly because none of that's true. So the survival mechanism kicks in because what's true is life doesn't have to be that hard. We came with everything we needed in order to live in a prosperous and abundant way in this extraordinary garden called Earth. But we have to align our thinking with it. All that's required is a changed mind. Number 4. You don't need to know the how. You do not need to know the how or the what. You don't need to know what your idea is. That will become clear to you if you follow the first 3 instructions. And you also don't need to know how you're going to take this idea and create it into the world. There was a study done in 2009. It was featured in Time magazine. It was a Harvard brain study. They brought in piano players to play the piano, and they studied what parts of their brain lit up. Then they had the pianists just imagine playing the piano, and what they discovered was the same parts of their brain lit up. Your brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. There have been a variety of subsequent studies done on this. They've even been able to identify the degree to which the neural activity of your brain occurs. And if you just imagine something, it is 80% as effective as if you're actually doing or practicing the thing. Again, that's why great athletes imagine performing. And we can actually see that it starts to build new neural networks. It starts to develop muscle fibers. It starts to build within their nervous system the habit as if they had been actually practicing on the court. And this is very important to understand, because where most people get blocked is thinking they need to know the how around the execution of their $1 million idea. But you don't need to know the how. Your job is to develop the habit or the practice of the $1 million idea realized. Your job is to practice as if that $1 million idea and that $1 million in your bank account was already a reality for you. To start to think, to start to feel, to start to act as if you've already created that $1 million idea. And we achieve this through the faculty of imagination. And so if you think you need to know how, in other words, if I thought I needed to know how to end all human suffering, which was my vision, that was my $1 million idea as it occurred to both me and my wife. Hey, we're going to help end all human suffering. By the way, I didn't have a first one-on-one coaching client. There was no Changed Mind book. There was no Changed Mind podcast. There was no powerful living experience with 1,000 people attending my annual event. There was nothing but an idea that had become activated that we would help end all human suffering. I started thinking about what that could look like. I started thinking about live events. I started thinking about coaching programs. I started thinking about being able to share my message with the world. And that thinking was an imagination. And that imagination started building memories of a future that had not happened yet. My brain did not know the difference between me actually having a book published or a podcast published or me imagining it. So you have the ability to start building a memory of your future even before it happens. And what's so magical about this is that if you're willing to not worry about the how, think about how easy this process is so far. All it is about making yourself available to $1 million idea by knowing it's there, about deciding that you have a purpose in the world, that this idea will translate itself through in the form of a business, a product, or a service, by deciding that financial abundance is your birthright, and by imagining what your future would look like and feel like as if it were right here, right now. Once that $1 million idea is materialized, you start to build memories of a future that has not happened yet. Now, let me ask you this question. If that future had happened and you had recorded it, let's call it a legitimate memory from that happening, wouldn't you and I be able to sit down and I would go, John, tell me, how did this happen? You'd go, well, Dave, here's my story. Susan, tell me how this happened. Well, Dave, here's my story. If you want to tune into the thoughts and ideas and then take action on the ideas and thoughts that we would look back on and call the plan, the way to access those thoughts and ideas is simply through the power of imagination. Start building a memory of a future that hasn't happened yet as if the idea was already materialized. You literally start to become the person, literally, in terms of your nervous system, the structure of your brain. You start to become the person who has achieved the $1 million idea, and then reality has to catch up with it. It catches up with it because you start to have thoughts, you start to have ideas, you start to meet people, you create coincidences, you create synchronicities, you decide to take a course, you decide to invest in a coaching program, you watch a YouTube video, something miraculously comes across your news feed that is exactly what you needed. All of that is a response to your willingness to envision a future that hasn't happened yet. See, you're operating in two realities right now. The reality that you've been creating based off of your historic thinking, and the reality that you're creating right here, right now through a changed mind. And it's important to understand that the way to actually materialize this $1 million idea into your reality, again, isn't about hustle. It isn't about grind. It isn't about having enough money. It isn't about having enough time. It's about having the desire and the vision and then being non-resistant to the desire and the vision. If you're non-resistant, you'll start having thoughts and ideas. You'll start feeling motivating emotions. You'll start taking constructive action, and you'll start producing micro results. And if you give that enough time, we'll get to a point where you've materialized your $1 million idea. Now, to do that, you have to give up your old way of thinking. Right? You have to let go of the, oh, it's for other people, it's not for me. You have to let go of the, oh, these things that happened to me during my childhood or even recently are an indication that I'm not capable or that greatness is not in my future. You have to give up the idea that money is hard to make or that you've never had enough, that you don't have enough, or you may not have enough in the future. You have to give up the resistance. If you give up the resistance, the desire 100% of the time, consistently and predictably, will find a way to materialize into your reality through the mechanism of your own thoughts, emotions, and actions, and through the power of activating coincidence and synchronicity. It's also important to know that when you wake up to this conversation, the shift might start to take place pretty quickly in ways that you didn't expect. All of a sudden, you might lose your job, because life is pushing you into building your $1 million idea. All of a sudden, a relationship may end. All of a sudden, the shift might hit the fan for you. But it's important for you to know that this is part of the process. It's important for you to know that life is always working in the most efficient ways to support you in materializing your $1 million idea. And as soon as you start to step out of the way through the thoughts that have been blocking the idea or the materialization of it, things are going to start to move for you. And so it's important to stay calm through that shift. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because if you understand that this is the process that every single person has gone through, whether it's me or Edison or Suzy Batiste or Elon Musk or anybody that you see out there creating anything that looks like $1 million idea, this is the process we've all gone through. This is the science of creation. This is the mechanism by which you are able to activate the $1 million idea that resides inside of you. And I know that it resides inside of you because you've asked for this video. The power of the magic, right, of the algorithm on YouTube, or what you've decided to proactively click on the audio platforms, clearly you've been asking for an answer to your question, and your $1 million idea is trying to make its way to you. And life is working in incredibly coordinated ways for your greatest growth, your greatest prosperity, and your greatest evolution, saying, hey, here's the answer. It's not really what you think. It's not what's been bringing up the resistance for you, that you've got to somehow find some idea, or you've got to be like the other people out there, or they're bigger and better than you are, and so you're not going to be able to experience the financial abundance and prosperity that you desire. No, if you have a desire and you're non-resistant, it'll produce the desired result. And so this conversation today is about identifying the 4 primary resistances that are preventing you from accessing and materializing your $1 million idea. Number 1, don't doubt that you've got a $1 million idea. You've got one or more million or multi-million dollar ideas that have been pre-planned for you in this lifetime. Number 2, don't doubt whether or not you're meant for greatness, whether or not you have a purpose in the world where you're meant to help and provide value to other people. You absolutely are. And the challenges that you've experienced in your life are the mechanism by which you are unlocking this greatness and translating those experiences into a business, entrepreneurship, a product, or service so that you can realize that $1 million idea. Number 3, let's move past the family money blocks. Let's make some new decisions. Let's let go of the resistance and transform the beliefs that money is hard to make, or that it takes a long time, or that's only meant for some people, or the fear or the doubt of financial insecurity that you don't have enough or you may not have enough moving forward. And let's replace that with the acknowledgement, which is real. It's based on your own life experience, that you've always had enough, you have enough, and you will always have enough. And from that place, we start to align ourselves with the frequency of the $1 million idea and with the flow of currency into our lives, the energy of money. And number 4, don't think you need to figure out the how. Allow life to work through you. Allow yourself to imagine the future that hasn't happened yet and become the person who will be destined to materializing that $1 million idea into your reality. That practice of imagination is the most important work that you could do in non-resistance. You change your brain. You start to evolve your nervous system. You literally start to become the person who will then have the thoughts, the ideas, and the action plan that will produce the desired result. 4 simple steps. Not a lot of work to do, just staying consistent with the practice. So I'm excited to see your $1 million idea. If you have loved this episode, do me a favor, let me know. I don't bring any sponsors onto the show other than myself, letting you know how you can go deeper into this work. So my only ask is pay it forward. Share this video with somebody who needs to hear it, because each and every one of us should be living in financial abundance and prosperity. Can you imagine if that were the case and we were living our spiritual vision into the world? What a different world this would be. And what an incredible impact you can make in the world. So share the love with somebody else and pay it forward. And do me a favor, if you really dug this, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can get some alerts about some future episodes that are coming up, because we're just going to keep going deeper and deeper into how you can have a powerful living experience, have a changed mind and a changed life. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Hey, it's David. Hop on over to davidbear.com. Click right here. There's also a link in the show notes, and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get immediate access to my free Mind Hack ebook, as well as a couple of trainings to help you master the inner game. This is a great way to stay informed and be a part of our community and be notified of special announcements. Click below, head on over to the website, get subscribed. If you loved this video, make sure you check out this one or this one, and I will see you in the next video.